The Awakening of the Titans. The Crythian Empire had ruled the western spiral arm of the galaxy for 8 centuries. Their ships moved through space like silver predators, sleek and deadly, each vessel a masterpiece of engineering that took decades to construct. The Crythians themselves were a proud species, standing nearly 3 meters tall with crystalline exoskeletons that shimmered in shades of deep purple and blue. They had conquered 47 star systems, not through brute force, but through what they called the doctrine of perfect war. Perfect war was an art form to the Crythians. Every battle was choreographed like a dance, following ancient protocols that dated back thousands of years. Fleets moved in geometric formations that were studied in military academies across a dozen species. Casualties were calculated to the smallest decimal point. Surrender was offered exactly 3 times before final engagement. Even their enemies respected the precision of Crythian warfare. It was brutal, yes, but predictable. Honorable. Civilized. The Galactic Council, a loose confederation of advanced species, had long accepted Crythian dominance as a natural order. When disputes arose between worlds, Crythian arbitrators were called. When pirates threatened trade routes, Crythian battle groups responded. They were not loved, but they were necessary. They maintained order in a chaotic universe. But there was one species the Crythians had never engaged. One world they had monitored from a distance but never approached. The humans of Sol 3 were an anomaly. They had achieved faster-than-light travel only 60 years ago, barely a heartbeat in galactic time. Their first ventures beyond their star system had been clumsy, almost embarrassing to watch. They lost colonies to equipment failures, suffered devastating accidents, and seemed to struggle with even basic concepts of interstellar logistics. The Galactic Council had classified them as a developing species, worthy of observation but not interaction. The Crythians had been watching Earth for 32 years. Their long-range sensors detected the usual signs of a young civilization: expanding mining operations, experimental ship designs, internal conflicts that seemed to consume more energy than their external ventures. Human transmissions were a chaotic mess of languages, cultures, and contradictory philosophies. They appeared to be a species perpetually at war with themselves. High Commander Vekarth, supreme tactician of the Crythian Third Fleet, had reviewed the human files with mild interest. His analysis was clear and confident. Humans were industrious but undisciplined, creative but unfocused. They had potential, but they lacked the refinement necessary for true galactic citizenship. Eventually, they would need to be brought into the order, taught the proper ways of conducting themselves among civilized species. That evaluation changed when a Crythian survey team encountered a human mining operation in the Kuiper Belt, on the very edge of the Sol system. The humans had established a small colony on a wandering asteroid, extracting rare minerals that had significant military applications. The survey team, following standard protocol, transmitted a formal notice. The mining operation was in violation of Crythian resource allocation treaties. The humans were to cease operations immediately and submit to Crythian authority for proper licensing. The human response came back within an hour. It was not written in any formal diplomatic language. It was a simple audio transmission from the colony administrator, a woman with a tired voice and what sounded like machinery running in the background. "We appreciate your concern, but this is our system. These are our rocks. We're not part of your treaties. Please respect our territory and have a nice day." The survey team transmitted the message back to Crythian High Command. For 3 days the War Council debated. Some argued that humans were too primitive to understand what they had done. Others insisted that this was a test, that if the Crythians allowed this insult to stand, other species would question their authority. High Commander Vekarth made the final decision. The humans would be educated. Not destroyed, not enslaved, but taught. A demonstration of Crythian power would suffice. 100 ships, a modest force by Crythian standards, would enter the Sol system, disable the human mining colony, and present terms of submission to Earth's governing bodies. It would be clean, efficient, and instructive. The Armada assembled at the edge of Crythian space. Each ship was staffed by warriors who had trained their entire lives for moments like this. They studied the human transmissions, learned the basic patterns of human ship movements, and prepared target assessments for every significant human installation in the Sol system. Intelligence reports indicated that humans had approximately 30 combat-capable vessels, most of them converted merchant ships with basic weapon systems. The Crythian force could eliminate the entire human fleet without suffering a single casualty. High Commander Vekarth stood on the bridge of the flagship, Eternal Harmony, watching as his fleet organized itself into the traditional assault formation. The formation was called the Unfolding Lotus, a pattern that had been used successfully for 600 years. Ships arranged themselves in layered petals, each layer providing covering fire for the others while maintaining perfect geometric spacing. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. It had never failed. The fleet jumped into the Sol system with calculated precision, emerging from faster-than-light travel exactly where their calculations predicted. They appeared between the orbits of Neptune and Uranus, far enough from Earth to avoid seeming like an immediate invasion, close enough to demonstrate serious intent. Vekarth expected immediate panic from the humans. He expected desperate transmissions, scrambling defensive fleets, perhaps even premature surrender. Instead, he received something he had never encountered in his 40 years of military service. Silence. The human colonies on Mars, the stations orbiting Jupiter, the settlements scattered through the asteroid belt, all of them went quiet. No transmissions. No ship movements. Not even commercial traffic. It was as if the entire human civilization had simply stopped. The fleet sensor officers reported anomalies. Several large objects were detected in high orbit around Earth, but they did not match any known human ship design. The power signatures were unlike anything in the Crithian database. When the officers attempted to get detailed scans, their instruments returned contradictory data. The objects seemed to shift, appearing in multiple locations simultaneously, defying the basic laws of physics. Vekarth frowned. This was not in the strategic projections. He ordered the fleet to advance slowly, maintaining formation. Whatever these objects were, they were likely experimental human technology, probably unstable. Humans were known for their reckless approach to engineering. These anomalies would resolve themselves. The fleet moved deeper into the Sol system. They passed the orbit of Saturn without incident. Then Jupiter. Still no human response. The silence was beginning to unnerve even the most experienced Crithian officers. This was not how species reacted to overwhelming military force. Fear had a pattern. Defiance had a pattern. This was neither. As the fleet approached the orbit of Mars, one of the anomalous objects moved. It had been positioned near Earth's moon, hidden in the electromagnetic shadow of the satellite. Now it emerged, and for the first time, Crithian sensors got a clear reading. It was a ship. A human ship. But it was nothing like the clumsy vessels the Crithians had observed in their surveillance. This ship was massive, easily twice the size of the Crithian flagship. Its hull was a dark gray, almost black, with no decorative elements, no identifying marks, no wasted space. It looked less like a ship and more like a weapon that had been given engines. The Crithian fleet immediately shifted into defensive posture, a standard response to unexpected contacts. Ships realigned, weapon systems powered up, shields reinforced. The geometric perfection of the unfolding lotus tightened as captains prepared for potential engagement. Vekarth opened a communication channel, broadcasting on all frequencies in the basic trade language used throughout the galaxy. Attention human vessel. You are in the presence of the Crithian Third Fleet, operating under the authority of the Galactic Council. Identify yourself and state your intentions. The response came immediately, but not in the trade language. It was in Crithian, spoken with perfect pronunciation and formal military grammar. We are the Battleship Resolute, commissioned by the Consolidated Defense Forces of Earth. Our intention is to defend our home system. Your fleet is not authorized to be here. You will turn around and leave immediately or you will be removed. Vekarth felt something he had not experienced in decades. Uncertainty. The human ship, this Resolute, had not simply learned Crithian language. It had learned military Crithian, a formal dialect taught only in war academies, filled with specific terminology that took years to master. And the voice delivering the message was calm, professional, almost bored. He composed himself quickly and responded with the traditional warning protocol. Human vessel, you are outnumbered 100 to 1. Your technology is centuries behind ours. We do not wish to destroy you, but we will if you force us. Stand down and this will end peacefully. There was a pause. Then the human voice came back, and this time there was something in the tone that Vekarth could not quite identify. It might have been amusement. Commander, you have made 3 incorrect assumptions. First, you assume numbers matter. Second, you assume you understand our technology. Third, you assume we are unprepared for you. We have been watching your empire for 30 years. We have studied every battle you have ever fought. We know your formations, your tactics, your protocols. We know the unfolding lotus formation you are currently holding. We know you will fire warning shots at exactly 1,200 meters. We know you will offer surrender terms 3 times before committing to full engagement. We know everything about you, Commander. But you know nothing about us. Vekarth felt his crystalline skin go cold. This was not the speech of a primitive species facing extinction. This was the voice of something that had been waiting, planning, preparing. He gave the order. Advance to engagement range. Prepare warning volleys. All ships maintain formation integrity. The Crithian fleet moved forward as one, a perfect geometric construction of military power. They closed to 1,200 meters, exactly as doctrine required. Warning shots were fired, brilliant beams of coherent energy that streaked past the Resolute, close enough to demonstrate capability but not to cause damage. The human battleship did not move, did not fire, did not even activate defensive shields. Then it spoke again. Thank you for the demonstration. Now let us show you what war looks like when you are not playing by ancient rules. What happened next would be analyzed by military historians for generations, and they would never quite agree on how it was possible. The Resolute did not fire conventional weapons. It released something into space, thousands of small objects that scattered in every direction like seeds from a flower. The Crithian sensors classified them as missiles, but they moved unlike any missile ever recorded. They accelerated instantly with no visible propulsion, reaching speeds that should have torn them apart. Within seconds, every single one of those objects had attached itself to a Crithian ship. Not to the weapons, not to the engines, but to the communication arrays. And then they activated. Every Crithian vessel simultaneously lost all communication with the rest of the fleet. Captains found themselves blind, unable to coordinate, unable to receive orders, unable to maintain the sacred geometry of the unfolding lotus. The formation, so perfect moments before, began to drift as individual ships attempted to compensate for what they assumed were local technical failures. Vekarth screamed orders into his communication system, but nothing transmitted. His ship was alone in space, surrounded by 99 other ships that might as well have been on the other side of the galaxy. The doctrine of perfect war required coordination. Without communication there was no coordination. Without coordination there was no doctrine. And then the Resolute moved. It did not move like a ship. It moved like lightning, crossing the distance between its position and the Crithian fleet in a fraction of a second, defying every principle of inertia and momentum. It appeared in the center of the scattered formation, and from its hull, more objects emerged. These were not missiles. They were drones, hundreds of them, each one moving with impossible precision. The drones did not attack. They disabled. With surgical accuracy they targeted the engine systems of ship after ship, not destroying them but rendering them immobile. Within minutes, half the Crithian fleet was dead in space, their crews unharmed but their vessels turned into drifting metal monuments to their own arrogance. Vekarth watched in horror as his mighty armada was systematically taken apart like a child's toy. And through it all, the Resolute had not fired a single lethal shot. It was demonstrating something far more terrifying than firepower. It was demonstrating absolute control. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the attack stopped. Communication systems restored themselves. The scattered Crithian ships found themselves able to contact each other again. And on every screen, on every communication panel, the same message appeared in perfect military Crithian. You came here to teach us about civilized warfare. But war is not civilized, Commander. War is survival. You have practiced war for 8 centuries, perfecting your formations and protocols. We have survived war for our entire existence. Every generation of humans has known conflict. We did not learn war from academies. We learned it from necessity. You thought you were facing a primitive species. You were wrong. You were facing a species that never stopped preparing for the moment when someone like you would arrive. Your ships will be repaired and released. Return to your empire. Tell them what happened here. Tell them that Earth is not joining your order. We will find our own path among the stars. And if anyone else decides to test us, they will receive the same lesson you did today. High Commander Vekarth sat in his command chair, his proud exoskeleton feeling suddenly very fragile. For the first time in Crithian history, a fleet had been defeated without a single kill, without even serious damage. They had been humiliated, yes, but they had also been spared. The humans could have destroyed them all. Instead they had made a point. As repair drones from the Resolute began approaching the disabled Crithian vessels, Vekarth understood the true message. The humans were not claiming superiority. They were establishing boundaries. They were saying, with actions louder than any words, that they would defend themselves but had no interest in conquest. They wanted to be left alone. The galaxy would never be the same. Word of this encounter would spread. The Crithian Empire's reputation for invincibility was shattered. And somewhere on that small blue planet, humans were continuing with their lives, probably unaware that they had just rewritten the rules of galactic politics. Vekarth composed a message to Krithian High Command. It was the hardest transmission he had ever sent. It contained only 5 words. We have made a terrible mistake. The doctrine of consequences. The news of the Sol incident reached Krithian Prime 17 days later. During those 17 days, High Commander Vekarth and his fleet limped back toward home space, their ships repaired just enough to make the journey. The human drones had been thorough but not destructive. Every disabled vessel had its engines restored to minimal functionality, life support systems stabilized, and navigation computers provided with the most efficient route out of the Sol system. It was the most polite military defeat in recorded history, and that somehow made it worse. The Krithian War Council convened an emergency session within hours of receiving Vekarth's full report. The council chamber was an ancient structure, its walls carved from a single massive crystal that had been shaped over generations. Holographic displays floated in the air, showing tactical recordings from the encounter. The same footage played over and over, each viewing revealing new layers of horror for the assembled military leaders. Grand Admiral Sekthis, eldest member of the council, watched the human battleship move through the Krithian formation for the 7th time. His crystalline face remained expressionless, but his hands trembled slightly against the smooth surface of the conference table. He had commanded fleets for 90 years. He had studied every major conflict in Krithian history. Nothing in his experience prepared him for what he was witnessing. The other council members argued in low voices, their words sharp and bitter. Some called for immediate retaliation, suggesting that a larger force be assembled, perhaps the entire Krithian armada. Others advocated for diplomatic engagement, proposing that emissaries be sent to Earth to negotiate proper treaties. A few voices, quieter and more nervous, suggested something that had never been spoken in this chamber before. Perhaps the humans should simply be left alone. Sekthis raised one long hand, and the chamber fell silent. His voice, when he spoke, carried the weight of nearly a century of military command. We are asking the wrong questions. The issue is not whether we can defeat the humans. With sufficient force, with proper preparation, perhaps we could. But that is not what matters. What matters is what this encounter reveals about our understanding of warfare itself. He gestured toward the holographic display, freezing the image on the moment when thousands of human devices scattered from the Resolute. Look at this moment. These objects, they are not missiles in any traditional sense. Our analysts have examined the recordings from every angle. There is no combustion, no plasma discharge, no gravitic distortion. These devices move through space as if inertia does not exist. As if the fundamental laws of physics that govern our technology simply do not apply to theirs. A younger admiral, his exoskeleton still showing the bright colors of youth, leaned forward. Perhaps their technology is not actually superior, Grand Admiral. Perhaps they are simply using methods we have not explored because they are inefficient or wasteful. Our doctrine has evolved over centuries to maximize effectiveness while minimizing resource expenditure. They may have achieved a temporary advantage through brute force application of energy. Sekthis turned his ancient eyes toward the young admiral. The look silenced any further comment. You are repeating what we want to believe. But believing comfortable lies does not change uncomfortable truths. I have reviewed the energy signatures from the encounter. The human vessel expended less power during its entire engagement than one of our ships uses to maintain basic shield integrity. This was not brute force. This was efficiency beyond anything we have achieved. He paused, letting the implication settle over the council. But the technology is not what frightens me. What frightens me is their doctrine. Or rather, their lack of one. The chamber filled with confused murmurs. Sekthis raised his hand again. Consider our approach to warfare. Every movement is calculated. Every formation has been tested across centuries. We know, with mathematical certainty, how each engagement will unfold. This is our strength. This is what makes us superior to the chaotic, unpredictable species that scramble through the galaxy without discipline or structure. He gestured toward the holographic display again, this time showing the moment when the Resolute appeared in the center of the Krithian formation. The humans do not follow doctrine. They did not respond to our presence with predictable patterns. They did not panic. They did not posture. They simply waited until we committed to our attack formation, and then they exploited the one weakness we never considered. They removed our ability to coordinate. In one move, they turned our greatest strength into our greatest vulnerability. A senior admiral with deep blue coloring spoke carefully. Are you suggesting that our doctrine is flawed, Grand Admiral? Sekthis was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried a sadness that surprised everyone in the chamber. I am suggesting that we have been fighting the same war for 800 years. We have perfected it. We have made it into an art form. But the humans have been fighting different wars every generation. They adapt. They innovate. They do not repeat the same patterns because they cannot afford to. On their world, species that repeat patterns go extinct. He stood slowly, his aged body creaking slightly. I have read the human transmissions that our intelligence services have intercepted over the decades. Do you know what humans say about insanity? They define it as repeating the same action while expecting different results. By their definition, our entire military philosophy is insane. The council chamber erupted in protests and arguments. Sectus let them rage for several minutes before raising his hand once more. I am not suggesting we abandon our traditions. I am suggesting we recognize that we are no longer the apex predators of this galaxy. There is a species that views warfare not as a ritual but as a problem to be solved. And they are very good at solving problems. The arguments continued for hours, but eventually a consensus emerged. The Crithian Empire would not retaliate against Earth. They would not send diplomats. They would do something that required more courage than either of those options. They would leave the humans alone and watch. Learn. Adapt. But not everyone agreed with this decision. In the outer territories of the Crithian Empire, commanders who had not witnessed the Sol incident firsthand felt differently. They saw the Council's caution as weakness. Among them was Fleet Commander Jarnex, a decorated officer known for his aggressive tactics and his contempt for species he considered inferior. Jarnex commanded a battle group of 30 ships stationed near the border of Crithian space, close to several neutral systems. When he received word of the Council's decision, he made a choice that would change everything. He would restore Crithian honor personally. He would prove that the Sol incident was a fluke, a lucky moment for primitives who got in one good strike before being overwhelmed by true military superiority. He began planning an attack on a human trade convoy that intelligence reported traveling through a nearby neutral system. It would be a small engagement, carefully documented and thoroughly executed. He would capture human ships intact, study their technology, and present his findings to the Council as evidence that humans could be beaten through superior tactics and determination. What Jarnex did not know was that human intelligence was far more sophisticated than anyone in the Crithian Empire had realized. The moment his battle group began moving toward the neutral system, alerts triggered on Earth. Within the command center of the Consolidated Defense Forces, buried deep beneath the surface of the planet, analysis computers flagged the Crithian movements and calculated probable intentions. Admiral Sarah Chin stood in that command center, watching the data streams flow across massive displays. She was the commander who had spoken to Vekarth from the Resolute, though he had never seen her face. She was a small woman by human standards, barely over 5 feet tall, with gray hair pulled back in a simple tie. She had spent 30 years in military service, most of it in naval intelligence. She did not look like someone who had just humiliated the greatest military power in the galaxy. She looked like someone's grandmother. Her second-in-command, Captain Marcus Reed, approached with a tablet. "Admiral, we have confirmation. Crithian battle group, 30 vessels, moving toward the Epsilon trade route. Intercept with Convoy 7 in approximately 40 hours. Chin nodded slowly, her expression thoughtful. "Jarnex?" "Yes, ma'am." "How did you know?" Chin smiled slightly. "I read his file. Aggressive, ambitious, thinks the Council has gone soft. He is exactly the type to try something stupid. What assets do we have in the area?" Reed checked his tablet. Convoy 7 has 4 escort frigates. The Resolute is currently 6 days away at maximum burn. We could redirect the Lincoln, she's only 2 days out. Chin shook her head. "No. Let the escorts handle it." Reed looked up sharply. "Ma'am, 4 frigates against 30 Crithian warships? Those are not good odds." Chin's smile widened slightly. "Captain, those are not frigates in the traditional sense. And those Crithian ships are about to learn the same lesson Vekarth learned. You do not judge human military capability by the size of the vessel. Convoy 7 consisted of 12 merchant ships carrying manufactured goods, raw materials, and more importantly, several hundred civilian passengers traveling between Earth's outer colonies. The 4 escort vessels were designated as frigates in official documentation, but that classification was deliberately misleading. Each frigate was essentially a mobile weapons platform packed with the same technology that had disabled the Crithian Third Fleet. Commander Lisa Torres stood on the bridge of the lead escort, the Defiant. She was reviewing tactical data when the Crithian battle group emerged from faster-than-light travel directly in the convoy's path. The traditional Crithian warning followed immediately. "Human vessels, you are in violation of Crithian security protocols. Reduce speed and prepare to be boarded for inspection. Torres looked at her tactical officer, a young man named Kim who was working his first convoy escort assignment. Kim, how many times did they practice that speech? Kim checked his console, confused by the question. Ma'am? Torres grinned. I'm asking how many times they rehearsed that transmission. Because it sounded very formal. Very official. I bet they recorded it a dozen times to get the tone just right. Kim smiled nervously, understanding that his commander was keeping the bridge crew calm. Probably, ma'am. Torres opened a communication channel, her voice casual and friendly. Crithian vessels, this is Commander Torres of the Defiant. I appreciate the formal greeting, but I am going to have to decline your inspection offer. These are civilian ships under Earth protection, traveling through neutral space. You have no jurisdiction here. I recommend you turn around and head home before this becomes awkward for everyone. There was a pause. Then Jarnex's voice came through, cold and dismissive. Human Commander, you are addressing a Crithian battle group with 4 escort vessels. You are outnumbered and outgunned. Stand down immediately or be destroyed. Torres sighed dramatically. I really wish you had not said that. Kim, please transmit file package Delta to the Crithian commander. Kim tapped his console. Within seconds, Jarnex received a data package. When he opened it, his blood went cold. It contained complete tactical recordings of the Sol incident, detailed analysis of Crithian weapons and shielding, and most terrifyingly, real-time tracking data showing that human intelligence had been monitoring his battle group for the past 3 weeks. They knew his battle plans before he had even finalized them. The final file in the package was a video. It showed Admiral Chin sitting at a desk, looking directly into the camera. Commander Jarnex, by the time you receive this message, you will be engaging 4 human escort vessels protecting a civilian convoy. I want you to understand something very clearly. Those 4 ships have the capability to disable your entire battle group without destroying a single vessel. We will do this because we do not want to kill your crews. They are following your orders, and they do not deserve to die for your arrogance. But you, Commander, you will be held accountable. After your ships are disabled, you will be taken into custody and transported back to Crithian Prime. You will face your own people and explain how you turned a military incident into a diplomatic disaster. This is your only warning. Stand down now or face the consequences. Jarnex terminated the transmission and immediately ordered his battle group to attack formation. He would not be intimidated by human propaganda. His ships moved into the descending Talon formation, a classic assault pattern designed to overwhelm smaller forces through coordinated fire. The 4 human frigates did not move. They simply held position between the Crithian ships and the civilian convoy. Then, just as the Crithian vessels achieved optimal firing distance, the frigates activated. Each ship released a cloud of devices identical to those used by the Resolute. Thousands of small objects scattered through space, moving with that same impossible speed and precision. Within 90 seconds, every Crithian ship in the battle group was disabled. Engines shut down. Weapons offline. Communication systems jammed. Life support maintained, but everything else rendered useless. Jarnex sat in his command chair, unable to believe what had just happened. His mighty battle group, 30 ships crewed by the finest warriors in the Empire, had been neutralized by 4 human vessels in less time than it took to recite a prayer. A single human shuttle approached his flagship. It docked and a boarding team entered. They were not heavily armed soldiers. They were military police, wearing light armor and carrying non-lethal restraint devices. They walked through the ship without resistance, found Jarnex on the bridge and politely asked him to accompany them. He went without a fight. What else could he do? The shuttle took him to one of the human frigates. He was placed in a small but comfortable holding cell and left alone for several hours. Eventually, Commander Torres came to speak with him. She sat down outside the cell holding 2 cups of coffee. I brought you a drink. It is a human beverage. We find it helps during difficult conversations. Jarnex stared at her through the transparent barrier. You have violated every protocol of civilized warfare. You have humiliated me. You have humiliated my entire empire. Torres took a sip of her coffee. Commander, let me explain something about humans. We do not care about honor in the way you do. We care about survival. About protecting our people. You threatened civilians under our protection. We responded with the minimum force necessary to stop you. Your crews are unharmed. Your ships will be released once we are sure you cannot pursue us. And you will be returned to your people. That is civilized behavior by our standards. She stood up, leaving the second cup of coffee near the cell. Your empire needs to understand something fundamental. We did not enter the galaxy looking for enemies. We did not come here to dominate or conquer. We came here to exist, to trade, to learn, to maybe eventually make friends. But we will not be bullied. We will not be subjugated. And we will not let anyone threaten our people without consequences. That is the doctrine of consequences, Commander. Every action has results. You chose aggression. These are the results. Torres walked away, leaving Jarnex alone with his thoughts and an alien beverage he would never drink. 3 days later, Jarnex was transferred to a Crithian diplomatic vessel that had been summoned to neutral space. The exchange was formal and awkward. Crithian officials said nothing, their shame evident in their body language. Human representatives were polite but firm. This incident would be reported to the Galactic Council. Earth was officially declaring that any further military action against human assets would be met with increasingly severe responses. When Jarnex returned to Crithian Prime, he was not executed or imprisoned. Instead, he was assigned to a new position in the War College. His job was to teach young officers about the humans, to explain over and over how he had failed, to ensure that future generations of Crithian commanders understood the simple truth that the galaxy had changed. Back on Earth, Admiral Chin received reports on the incident with satisfaction. She had hoped that the sole encounter would be enough, but she had prepared for the possibility that someone would need a second demonstration. Now hopefully the message was clear. In the following months, something remarkable happened across the galaxy. Species that had lived under Crithian authority for generations began to reassess their positions. Not rebellions exactly, but a quiet shift in attitude. If humans could establish boundaries with the mighty Crithian Empire, then perhaps other species could as well. Trade delegations from a dozen worlds began requesting meetings with Earth representatives. They came with curiosity, with caution, but most of all, with hope. They wanted to understand these strange new players in galactic politics who fought only when necessary and never took more than they needed. The Galactic Council convened its first full session in 3 years. For the first time in anyone's memory, the Crithian representative did not sit at the head of the chamber. Instead, by unanimous vote, a rotating chairmanship was established. The age of single-power dominance was over. Admiral Chen watched the proceedings via secure transmission from Earth. She did not smile, but she felt a quiet satisfaction. Humanity had achieved something remarkable. They had entered a galaxy full of ancient powers and established themselves not through conquest, but through demonstration. They had shown that strength did not require domination, that security did not require subjugation, and that the newest species could teach the oldest ones lessons they had forgotten. The human doctrine was simple. Leave us alone and we will leave you alone. Threaten us and we will stop you. Work with us and we will build something better together. In the years that followed, historians would debate the significance of the Sol incident and the convoy engagement. Some called it the beginning of a new era in galactic politics. Others saw it as simply a correction, a rebalancing of power that was long overdue. But everyone agreed on one point. The humans had arrived and the galaxy would never be the same. In her office on Earth, surrounded by reports and strategic analyses, Admiral Chen finally allowed herself a small smile. Her grandson had sent her a message asking about the famous battleship Resolute, wanting to know what it felt like to command such a powerful vessel. She composed a reply in her mind. Power is not in the ship, she would tell him. Power is in knowing when to use it and when to hold back. True strength is protecting what matters while respecting what does not threaten you. But she would add one more thing, something she had learned across 30 years of service. And always be prepared. Because the universe is vast, and we have only just begun to explore it.